And we are getting ever closer, Larry, to the official beginning of NBA free agency. And with that, it's time to bring in an expert, Bobby Marks of ESPN. He is a former GM. He's an expert on these off-season and in-season roster things. Bobby, you're on 95.7 The Game. How you doing today?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Doing well, and we're all still trying to pick through the aftermath of the big Jordan Poole trade, yet to be finalized, but basically official. Jordan Poole out, Chris Paul in. In terms of financial flexibility, is this a win just on the balance sheet for the Golden State Warriors?
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, Poole was about to start this extension. He had $127 million, and certainly for the next 4 years. And you look at what's coming back, really only 1 year that's guaranteed with Chris Paul at 30.8. The next year is not guaranteed at all. And it just gives you, certainly your cost this year are going to be high. You're still probably trending towards that $500 million number in luxury tax and salary, but gives you more flexibility, whether it be with Draymond or Klay. You're still going to be a tax team, but you just won't have that big $27 million hit out there. I mean, the math adds up. It's just a matter of now, does it make sense basketball-wise, right? Like that's the big question here as far as how does Chris Paul, fit in with this group.
Bobby, give us a prediction on the final Green contract. What's it going to look like, years, dollars, and who do you think's the number one pursuer? We're here in Detroit, we're here in Portland, we're here in Sacramento, but who's really hot on this trail?
Well, Portland would have to be a sign and trade. I don't see why Golden State would want to do that. Certainly Detroit's got the cap space, $30 million, potentially more. Sacramento's got maybe $36 million. I think the end number, so you opt out at 27.6. You don't leave that on the table. I'm going to say 3 for 100. That's the number. Don't quote me on it. But I think that's kind of what you're looking at as far as with Draymond, as far as this is his last big bite of the apple, and that there are suitors out there besides Golden State.
And how much does that motivate maybe where this price goes? Because all indications from Draymond, I want to ride out with who I rode in with, and then you do get the Sacramento and the Detroit rumors, and Jordan Poole no longer here, maybe clearing the way for Draymond to be back happy with Golden State. When you offer that 3 in 100 prediction, are you assuming that it is with Golden State?
It is, yeah, I am. I can't see how they can let him walk. And I know there's probably a price point, but let's just say you lose him for nothing. It's not like all of a sudden you got a $30 million slot to go sign a player here. You're still $12 million over the luxury tax. You got the veteran minimum exception. You're going to lose DiVincenzo likely here. What are your options here? Especially, hey, if Steph would have had a year left on his contract, I'd say, you know what, maybe this is the end, and you just start looking for. But when Steph Curry has 3 years left on his contract, you do everything in your power to put the best players around him. And I think, if it's Draymond, you're going to have to probably pay a little bit because there is a market for him.
I loved you on the draft, by the way, Bobby. I mean, we always think you're great, but on the draft coverage, you're phenomenal. One of the questions I have about draft day that I got to get answered, Mike Dunleavy's brother, James Dunleavy, is an agent. And he's not just an agent, he's Trace Jackson Davis's agent. And I'm reading here in the last couple of days that the Warriors and Dunleavy's brother, James Dunleavy, worked together to ensure that TJD would not get picked until the Warriors could get on the board with the Wizards at 57. I thought this kid could have gone 19 to 25 in that range. What do you know about what was done there to try to, influence other teams to not draft Trace Jackson Davis? How did that come together from all the intel that you have?
Yeah, first I agree with you. I was stunned, he was there, right? I just, and maybe some of it had to do with, whatever arrangement was made, certainly with Golden State promising him probably at, late in the late 50s here. I thought he could have gone in the late 20s. I thought he could have been in the 30s here. So really surprised here. Listen, he was fair game for any of the teams to take him. There's no unwritten rules where if a player gets a promise from a team, and even though the agent of the the player. And I know James well, is his brother Mike. I don't know. I don't really buy much into it just because if Detroit was picking at 40, they can pick them at 40 here. I think where it gets a little dicey here is that if the agent is telling teams, hey, similar to Rich Paul did it with Chris Livingston, who went 58 to Milwaukee. Don't pick my client. Well, if you pick him, are you burning him as far as when it comes to maybe free agency and down the road here? So if a team at 40 thinks that Trayce Jackson-Davis is the best player and he can help them, then you pick him, and then you worry about the ramifications there.
Bobby Marks, ESPN front office insider here on Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game. We've talked a lot about the new CBA kicking in the NBA. How does that affect the Warriors' ability going forward to keep Klay Thompson in terms of what his salary might look like if they want to keep him next year after his $42 million comes off the books?
Yeah, I mean we're hearing we're going to talk a lot about second apron and restricting teams. I think there's two phases here. Certainly the phase we're going to go in here where it's got less teeth as far as the restrictions. Certainly you can't use your $5 million tax level, and there's some other, certainly acquiring a player. Next offseason, he gets more, basically triples up here. Where you're going to hear a lot about, hey, if you're in the second apron 3 out of 5 years, your pick, goes to the back of the draft, or your pick gets frozen here. And listen, you got to really spend. I mean, you got to spend a lot of money to put yourself in that position here. Klay is eligible for, I think it's 4 for 223. I think that's what the number is. Listen, he's not getting 4 for 223. I think you're going to see, James Harden and Kyrie Irving. I think that those two guys in free agency kind of sets the tone a little bit here. It's hard to pay a player $55-60 million in this new day and age here, and I think there's an extension there, and I think there's going to be a compromise here. Certainly it's going to have from Klay. What a new deal looks like, and as we talked about when we started the show, the pool money coming off certainly helps. I mean, that gives you more flexibility as far as to, maybe add a little bit more money to that. But yeah, I mean, we're in a new day and age. I mean, everyone is not Phoenix who can just basically go out and, have 4 more max guys and then basically just kind of build your roster on minimums and not have draft assets and go in that direction.
We're a lot of speculation about, veteran minimum options for Golden State. I mean, based on who you've talked to, what are you thinking? Are you hearing any names that could be veteran minimum options for Golden State? And where do the Warriors sit now that they've subtracted Poole, added Paul, they've got some age on their roster, but they've won some titles? Where do they sit in the group of teams at the top as far as, coveted locations and landing spots for minimum guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, to compete for a championship, I think you're certainly talking about Denver. We can talk about, certainly what Phoenix has been able to do. We'll talk about the Lakers. I think you can certainly talk about where Golden State is. I think it's, as you mentioned, it's a priority. It's almost like going back to, 2021 off season when you went out and got Otto Porter and Nemanja, and you got veterans here to build your bench with the veteran minimum exception. And it's going to be interesting as far as, who those guys are going to be. It's, you got to go bargain shopping. Those players are going to look for, to make more. But I do think there's a fallback with Golden State or Phoenix. The hard part is you're in the same boat with Phoenix and some of these other, Phoenix, Miami, the Clippers, some of these higher spending teams out there. But it's the same group of veterans. I think Dennis Smith Jr. would be great there. Former first round pick. You maybe be able to get him on the veteran minimum exception. Making a trade is a little more challenging here, but you're almost playing a little bit of the waiting game as far as to see who kind of falls through the cracks.
Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA front office insider here on 95.7 The Game. Joe Lacob has shown no willingness to slow down in terms of spending, but as you get closer to the end of the big three and Chris Paul being on the books this year and not a complete guarantee for next year, how do you think this proceeds in terms of Joe Lacob's willingness to continue to spend at this high level?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will continue. It's what you're trying to do is kind of like, continually try to flip your roster, right? Whether it be, certainly you flipped Harrison, you flipped, Russell, you flipped Jordan Poole. Now, like, what else can you flip? As far as, is it next year? Can you flip Chris Paul next year when we're talking at? It becomes a little more challenging because where the Warriors are, where their finances, you can't add money to a Chris Paul trade. It's basically, you can send out Chris Paul and then take back a 10 and a, $18 million guy here. So that's the continual process of trying to flip guys. And you're hoping that your draft picks, whether it be Kuminga and Moody, and I know, Brandon Podziemski, he can come in. I said it on the night of the draft. Guys like him, you got to, 3 and 4 year guys have been in college. Got to go out and get those guys, and guys that can come in and play right now. It's going to be a big year with these young kids.
If the Warriors moved off of Klay Thompson, there'd be a lot of disappointed Warrior fans, but I'm looking at that $43 million in their cap situation, and it's like if they let him walk at the end of the year, they're not going to be able to replace him at all. Mm-hmm. So, who do you think, if they were to broach that topic of trading Klay this summer, who's a team that would really want that $43 million expiring deal that you can see?
Well, I think it's almost like here's what I look at it with Klay. It's almost like the situation Portland potentially could face with Damian Lillard if he ever, wanted out there, where Klay doesn't have a no-trade clause, but man, has he built up some equity with that organization here, where you're not just going to ship Klay Thompson to somewhere that he does not want to be. It might be a destination he wants to, re-sign with here. So that's the challenging. I mean, yeah, you can ship him anywhere, and you can send him to Cleveland, and you can get, 2 guys and a draft pick or whatever for it. But I do think you have to I think there is certainly a balancing act, and there's some sensitivity here as far as if you ever wanted to kind of go down that direction.
And if you went that direction and a team like the Clippers was to offer Paul George or Kawhi Leonard,
sure,
would those pieces be the kind of a fit to make Golden State a better team, or would it just be kind of a reshuffle in your opinion?
It's the great what if, right? Because we don't, with Klay and Paul, it's always been about health. I think, certainly, hey, if you can flip Klay and, you probably got to give more for Paul George, certainly, and then you have the ability to re-sign him, you do that. Kawhi's different just because I don't trust him, from a physical standpoint, the ability to kind of hold up there.
I'm kind of curious. I mean, I know today he decided to become a free agent. Didn't surprise anybody. But I'm hearing the Knicks for Dante DiVincenzo. Where do you think DiVincenzo winds up? And what kind of money do you think he gets?
Yeah, I mean, New York's going to be interesting just because Josh Hart's got a decision with his 12.9 player option in the next few days here. I think Dante's I don't think he gets the full 12-4 exception. I think he's still in that 6 to 8 range, maybe a little bit more. Certainly New York linked, certainly because you got Brunson there, you got Hart, 2 Villanova guys there. But I do think it's more than what he's opting out of. I mean, as I said, you don't opt out unless you've got at least that, in your back pocket there. So the full mid-level is, they don't give that away a lot as far as the full amount. So I do think he's probably in that 6 to 8 range, maybe a little bit more.
Free agency about to start at the end of this week. What's the rest of your week like, Bobby? Busy?
Well, I'm sitting in the parking lot at Staples right now, and I've got to get some office supplies when this thing gets cranking here. So that's me for tonight, and I feel like it's been Groundhog Day the last 5 days on campus at Bristol, where you're getting up at 5:30 to do TV, and then you're leaving at midnight. So today I escaped from campus, nice. And because I know everything is going to get extremely, extremely busy in the next day here.
I'm surprised they give you off-campus privileges. They didn't. They didn't do that.
There might be a tracker on the car that I rented. I don't know. I mean, hey, I'm on call. Listen, if there's a trade that happens in 5 minutes, I can be there in 5 minutes.
Exactly. Hey, a lot of Warrior fans wanted Whitmore, and a lot of people thought he was going 7, 8, 9. He was there on the board at 19. The Warriors passed. He went to Houston at 20. What's the intel on Whitmore? I've heard all kinds of things, that he was late for workouts and this and that. Anything that you found out about Whitmore that turned off some teams that caused him to fall to 20?
Yeah, questionable medical. I think that was a little bit of a concern. Certainly, workouts weren't great. Interviews were fair, to say a little bit of aloof. I mean, listen. I think the more of the off court, as far as what I don't know if he was late or not. The personality, I think that weighs a little bit more with these workouts here. When you're bringing a player in, and he's going 1-on-0 or 3-on-3 here, based on hey, go watch him play at Villanova. Go watch him play in high school to get a base on as far as how he can contribute here. But yeah, I mean, he fell from what we have in the top 6, top 7, all the way to to 20 at Houston here, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens in the next year or two. It's certainly a big wing here, and but I really like what Golden State did. Brandon played extremely well at the pre-draft camp. Got a lot of Christian Braun in him as far as a guy you can just throw out there right now. You can do a little bit of everything and kind of fill up your box score.
Highlighters, paper clips, staplers. Bobby, you're a busy man. I appreciate you taking some time out for us out here in San Francisco.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bobby.
All the best. Bobby Marks, ESPN, NBA front office insider, office supply shopper. We'll have to add that to his Twitter bio, Larry.